Hey guys, Chauncey Phillips here. Welcome to November 4th DVD update. I talk about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, guys, if you enjoy these DVD Blu-ray updates, definitely give this video a thumbs up. Leave me comments below on what some of the titles you guys have checked out lately, any future titles coming up that you suggest I check out, and what you thought about the titles that I checked out in this update. Now, the first one from Shout Factory, Scream Factory line is The Doctor and the Devils. This is one that I always really liked. They made a couple of different movies on this story. I think the story was like, they're talking about how the actual story was in public domain. The other movie they made on this was Bergen Her, and the other one, there was another one too, a Hammer horror one as well they did. I can't remember offhand what the Hammer horror one was. This one to me was one of the most interesting because it kind of mixed in like a level of humor with it. But it's pretty much about a doctor who, this is back like the 1800s when, you know, they didn't really have any ways of testing, medicine and treatments and seeing, what ways, like, basically examining the bodies and things like that. The only kind of bodies that they would get was like criminals who like committed murder and things like this. The doctor was never really, who was doing these kind of tests on people and trying to look at their body and trying to figure out everything about the bodies back then. He didn't really have many bodies to work with, so he was getting supplied underground with like corpses, and the people had would bring him, and he would pay them, and all these kind of things. And basically, it was about these two guys who kind of got wind that he was buying these bodies, so they started going out and kind of finding people and bringing them to him, and they were bringing him like the freshest bodies, and it was kind of like, how are they getting these things? And it's pretty much about them going out there and going their own ways of getting these people and kind of finding ways that people die real soon and things like that. I always liked this one. I thought that it was a pretty well-made movie. Stephen Rea, who was in The Crying Game and a whole bunch of different movies, played one of them who was, picking up the bodies. Patrick Stewart has a small part in this. I really like this one. I thought that this was a pretty cool movie, and Mel Brooks actually produced this movie, so it does have like a slight level of like comedy to the movie as well. It has a commentary on here with the author, and then an interview on here with Mel Brooks and the producer, and the trailer for the film. I like this one though. I thought this was a really interesting take on the Bergen characters, and one I don't think that many people have seen. The next one from Warner Brothers, the Melissa McCarthy film, Tammy, and this is the extended cut of the film. I think the extended cut is only a couple minutes long, like 3 or 4 minutes longer. I have kind of mixed opinions on this one. It wasn't, the idea wasn't like a bad idea. I just thought that this one didn't come across to me as funny as it could have been, as funny as some of the other stuff. Like, I really liked her, Melissa McCarthy, recently in, St. Vincent. I like her doing like a mix of a little bit more serious movies, because I think she's really good at it. And with this movie, like, I didn't love Identity Thief, and this one to me failed more towards the Identity Thief, compared to some of her other roles. It wasn't necessarily bad. That was pretty much about her losing her job, and I think the trailers too showed a little too much for this movie. But she works at this cheeseburger place, loses her job, and then she ends up, her husband is cheating on her, and he doesn't even seem to care, and she kind of is getting like everyone's sort of doing bad things to her and not really paying attention to her or caring about her, because she's sort of screwing around a lot. So she ends up robbing one of the places that she works at. Not that, I don't think it was the same location. I don't think so. But she ends up robbing one of the locations, and then goes out on the run with her grandmother and Kathy Bates, who's her grandmother's friend, and they're kind of like on like this cross-country adventure and things that are coming on. But I think there was just a couple missed opportunities in this movie, and there's certain things that they could have done that I don't feel like happened. Like I said though, I think it's a fun movie, but it's not just wasn't as good as I had hoped it was going to be. But it has on here though, a making of thing about the cross-country adventure, and it also has on here, Line-O-Rama, so it has a bunch of extra lines and deleted scenes and a gag reel on here. But like I said though, I think it's one of those ones, more of a rental one, but just not one that I would say was I had higher hopes for it. That's all I'll say. That was mainly. The next one from Clint Eastwood is the biopic film on Frankie Val. I keep on thinking Frankie Avalon for some reason. It's Frankie Val. It's called The Jersey Boys. So it's Clint Eastwood's new film, and it's pretty much like a biopic about the group, the Four Seasons. Frankie Val and the Four Seasons, and it's kind of every time I think of them, I think of that song in Nothing But Trouble. I know they were in a lot of different movies, but when John Candy was getting changed, and Chevy Chase was in there trying to get away, and he's like, "Big girls, don't cry." I always say the songs, they always get stuck in your head like in a really weird way. But it's pretty much about them and kind of like these guys that came from unlikely places and they kind of had problems in their past and ties, things with the mob and all kinds of different issues with them. It's about them kind of how they got brought together. Christopher Walken is in this film, but it's pretty much just about them coming together and how it came together. But they had all these kind of other issues going on, like I said. I like this one. I thought it was a little bit more of a different kind of movie for Clint Eastwood in a while. I think most people probably like this one. Like I said, I thought that this one was well made and everything, and especially if you're interested in them. This is also played on Broadway as well, and it was really, really popular on Broadway. I believe it's still playing on there as well, this story about it. But it has on here a feature on here for Broadway, the big screen, and then some featurettes as well. But definitely check this one out too if you're interested in that. The next one from Disney is Disney's Maleficent. And this one had some mixed opinions, but I really like this one a lot. It's Angelina Jolie as Maleficent. I can't say the name right. I have a hell of a time saying Maleficent. I believe I'm saying that right. But it's pretty much about the story of the character Maleficent, who's the villain in the Snow White, in the Sleeping Beauty film, about she puts the curse on the baby and then what happens. But in this one, it kind of shows why her character became mean, and she starts out nice, and it shows you why she got to the point that she was, and it's mainly a story following her and about what happens to her, and then why she eventually puts the curse onto the princess, and then so that's pretty much about what it is, and about the princess going off with the three fairies, and that's pretty much what it is. With the curse on her, where she pricks her finger, and she's going to go to sleep, and then if she doesn't find the prince. But to me, I want to talk more about though. Like I said, I don't know why it had some mixed opinions. I really thought that this was a really well-made movie. I thought that she did a really good job in the character. I like the cast in this. Juno Temple's in this movie as one of the fairies in this. Like I said though, I like this one, and it has on here a bunch of different featurettes on here. Talking about the effects, talking about Elle Fanning playing the princess in this movie. I checked this out though. I really thought that this was a well-made, different version on the story. The next one from Paramount is The Rock's new movie, Hercules, and this is the extended cut of the movie. I believe there's also a 3D version of the extended cut as well, and this is directed by Brett Ratner, so it's got kind of more of a mix of comedy in it, because most of the Hercules movies are really, really serious. This is one of those ones that kind of is more of an aware kind of movie of what kind of movie it's making, and kind of has more fun with it. And I liked, The Rock playing Hercules in this. I actually thought he did a pretty good job in this, and it's pretty much about the myth of Hercules, but The Rock's character in this kind of knows about what they say about him, and that they say that he is from, his father was the god, I think it was Zeus, I think that's what it was, and his mother was immortal, and kind of the whole legend that people are saying about him. And he has these 12 tasks in the movie that he has to do, ends up completing them, and then once he completes these tasks, he's going to be free from all the kind of problems that he's dealing with. And then right when that comes along, this one woman comes to him and says that he does this thing for him, and ends up killing this person and going after them. Then he will get all this money. So it's kind of about him going on this adventure with the group of the people that are with him. But I liked it though. I thought that, like I said, it's kind of has some more comedy to it, and it's kind of a different take on the whole Hercules films. And it has the extended cut and the theatrical cut, deleted scenes, and some featurettes on here, and a commentary track. I think the extended cut is like a couple minutes longer. It's like 10 minutes long or something like that. That was the version of it that I watched. But like I said, though, I thought it was a different take on the whole thing. The next one from Paramount as well is the new movie Happy Christmas. It's Anna Kendrick and Melanie Lynskey, and it's pretty much about Joe Swanberg. I always say his name wrong. He was in The Sacrament, and he directed Drinking Buddies. Directed this one, and he actually shot this movie on 16 millimeter, so it has that kind of old school kind of like vibe to it, which is like almost like you can't date it. I don't know why they decided on 16 millimeters. I don't think it had to be. It definitely gave it a kind of a cool look though, but I'm sure it added a lot to the money having to shoot on 16 millimeter. But it's pretty much Melanie Lynskey's character and Joe Swanberg. They're living together. They're married. And her sister ends up coming back, played by Anna Kendrick, and she's kind of had some problems in the past, drinking and drugs and all kinds of they don't get into everything, but she's had a lot of problems in the past. Ends up moving back in, moving in with her sister to try and get away and have a fresh start for a while. When she comes back, she's kind of she doesn't really, I don't know, she's just having all kinds of issues and having problems with alcohol and just sort of unraveling things for the family and bringing all kinds of problems, and she's not really paying attention to her surroundings, and they have a kid at the house, and it's just not a great thing to have her around because she's very irresponsible and things like that. But her character had a breakup and things like that, but it's kind of about them trying to get have bonding again and things like that. And I liked it though. I thought that it was a pretty well made movie. I've always liked Melanie Lynskey, from Adam Rifkin's movie Detroit Rock City, and one of my favorite movies, But I'm a Cheerleader. So she's been in a whole bunch of stuff, Heavenly Creatures. I like this though. I thought it was an interesting one about someone coming in and causing problems for the family. The next one from Paramount as well is the complete series, Reno 911. And this is always a show that I've been a huge fan of. It has an interesting case in it. I'm sure people want to see what the whole set looks like. But it's the discs in here, and I think they're reprinted discs. All the seasons, and it's a really good price for all of them. But it's if you haven't seen the show, it's pretty much like a show kind of like Cops, but like a spoof on the whole thing about all these cops together, and it's kind of following them around. And they're kind of bumbling full cops, and they're always kind of getting into issues. And it kind of has a bunch of different characters that come back in it, like Nick Swartzen is the one guy on roller skates who's always on drugs. But it's just kind of about them, kind of the arrests that they have and the people that they deal with and things like that. It's just a really fun show that has a lot. Most of it was kind of improvised, kind of stuff like that. A lot of people too have gone on to different things lately too. Like the one actress is in the Goldbergs, and the other one was always think it was the voice of Rocco. Doesn't have the movie on here though, but I like this show. It has on here too commentaries and deleted scenes and outtakes. I would check this out though. This is one of those kind of shows most people know what it is if they've seen it, but it's just a great repackaging of the whole series all together. The next one from Accelerator Media, and this is one of my favorite ones in the update. And I wasn't sure, I had seen a lot of, really good positive reviews on this, and I was thinking it's just going to be the same kind of haunted house film as you've seen lots of, but it really wasn't. It was and it really changes tone in the movie too. And it also plays out pretty funny. It's a film from New Zealand called Housebound, and it's about this girl who in the beginning of the movie is with her boyfriend robbing the ATM, and it goes terribly wrong. She gets stuck in the car. She can't get away after she steals the money from it, and so she gets on home detention and ends up having to move back in with her mother and her mom's boyfriend back in the old house that she used to live in. And when she's there, she's puts that ankle bracelet on. She can't leave. And she's pretty much miserable there. She can't go anywhere. She can't do anything. The house has all kinds of dated things, like an old TV with nothing really on. The computer's all screwed up. And kind of weird things are happening. She's listening to the radio and hears her mom talking about how she's always, one time she was in the basement, she's felt this scene of dread and saw somebody over her shoulder and hears all kinds of weird things in the house. And of course, right after this happens, she becomes kind of like wondering what's going on, thinks the mom is nuts, but then she starts kind of hearing things in the house. Her phone goes missing. She hears it like all out through the house ringing, all kinds of noises and things like that. So she ends up kind of investigating it, and the guy who is in charge of like monitoring her on the bracelet, the home security kind of guy, he ends up coming over when she gets a ring on the bracelet, and they kind of all work together to try and investigate this thing. But I like it because it's got some real kind of comedic stuff to it, and some real twists, and like it also has aspects of it too, without ruining anything. One of my favorite 70s movies, 70s TV movies I talk about a lot. But I can't recommend this enough. This really, really was one of those movies that surprised me and plays out really good, and I think a lot of people are going to really like this. So definitely check out that Housebound. The next one from 88 Films is Graduation Day, and it's from the Slasher collection. This is like the first of their collection. These are all region free, but they're going to be putting out a whole bunch of upcoming stuff from this, and they're in these cool red cases. And it's, if you haven't seen Graduation Day, it's about, the school, the one track guy ends up dying, and, throughout the school, other people start dying off, and it's kind of like a comedic, kind of spoof kind of take on, people, like a slasher from the school. And the one guy, too, who plays the principal, I talked about this last time I talked about the movie, really kind of reminds me like of Lloyd Kaufman character. But the one thing that's really cool about this is it has a new documentary in here called Scream Queens, Horror Heroines Exposed. And that was one of the main reasons I was really interested in this for this new edition. And it, it's presented by Debbie Rochon, and it's got interviews on here with Sybil Danning, Lynn Larney, Danielle Harris. Danielle Harris, though, came across really good in this. And like I thought Danielle Harris really, you can tell that she does these horror movies and things like that because she likes it. Because she's talking about how, it's not a huge amount of pay in it, and it's just sort of either you like doing it or you don't. And that's pretty much what it is. And, but they get Linnea Quigley in here, Brink Stevens, Cassandra Peterson, plays Elvira. Just a really interesting documentary talking about all the subject of if they felt like they were kind of used in the 80s with some of the stuff they had to do, and kind of about how back then people were doing that just to kind of break into the business. And it's just a really, really well-made documentary. The only person they didn't get, which I was really surprised, was Tiffany Shepis. But they did a really good job, though, with, getting a lot of people for this. And the next one from Rara Video is Werewolf Women. It has a really good transfer in this. I think this is one of my favorite things they put out and one of my favorite transfers of theirs. And it's on Werewolf Women. And it's pretty much about this woman who, in the past, like someone who was related to her, they say was this werewolf and killed all these people. And she starts having all these visions of herself as, like, this werewolf. And she kind of goes around and, like, goes out and starts like seducing men and like going like crazy and like killing them and like not acting like she remembers it, and ends up getting locked away in the nut house, and it's like she ends up escaping and like on the run. They're all trying to find her, and like the father's trying to wonder where she is. It just has really cool music and a really cool vibe. It's one of those ones too. They quote on here saying Quentin Tarantino, one of his favorite movies. Like I said, I like this. It was just a really, really kind of trippy, weird werewolf movie that plays out really good. And, some of these movies back then can kind of be slow and a little bit, like just, some of them are really good and some of them have like boring aspects to them. And if you see a lot of these movies, you know what I'm talking about. Like this one really plays well. And you really feel bad for her character because of what happens to her in the movie too. Because he has all this kind of problems and abuse and things like that. But I like this one. I thought that this was a really good one. You can tell, too, it's one of those movies that kind of inspired a lot of other movies. The next one from Twilight Time, these are the limited edition to 3000 ones. The first one is The Believers. So I just finished watching this one recently, and this is a really creepy, weird movie with Martin Sheen, who is, his wife ends up dying in this freak accident. She gets electrocuted by the toaster, and it's kind of about this voodoo tribe, this main guy who's like going around, he's like killing these people, and he's like committing sacrifices on these kids. And this guy, Martin Sheen ends up moving out to the city, trying to get away and have a new start with his son. And all of a sudden people, like kids start like, Martin Sheen's character was like a therapist to cops. It's exclusively to cops. And Jimmy Smith's character in the movie ends up going crazy one day. They find him with this dead body of this kid, and he's like freaking out. So Martin Sheen's character tries to help him and tries to get to the bottom of what happened and why he's acting the way he is and what he witnessed. And Jimmy Smith is like, they've seen me and they know who I am. They're going to get me. And pretty much though, Martin Sheen discovering this and looking into this is really not great, because this guy kind of gets a fascination with his son, and just a really cool, like I said, creepy movie. And like, if you don't like spiders too, that's one thing. That spiders in this is going to seriously creep you out in this movie. But I really, like I said, it was one of those ones that I don't know why it didn't become more of a classic. It was just like such a creepy movie. The next one is Audrey Rose, and this is from Twilight Time as well. And it's funny though, Brooke Shields, I remember they were saying was going to be in this, but then backed out and decided to do Alice Sweet Alice, which I think I like Alice Sweet Alice a little bit better, just because it's such a weird, creepy movie. But this one is actually really good as well. It's downer though to me, I thought, and it's about this girl who is being followed around by Anthony Hopkins' character, and he's kind of like lurking around, and the family notices him, and he's trying to talk to her, and they're saying like, what is this about, and why are you following her around? And they don't know what his intentions are, and he pretty much comes to them one night and tells them that he believes that Audrey Rose is his daughter, that his daughter died in a car accident a number of years back, I think 11 years back or 12 years back, and he believes that her soul is in Audrey Rose. And he kind of comes around, and Audrey Rose is starting to have these kind of attacks when she wakes up in the middle of the night screaming. No one can control her. Anthony Hopkins comes over though, and he says Audrey Rose starts talking to her, calms her down. He's the only person that can calm her down. And it's kind of like this whole thing about, wondering if it's true and if reincarnation, is true. And I liked it though. Like I thought that was an interesting take. Like I said though, I like this one. It's another one that I'm surprised doesn't have a little bit more attention to it. The next one is the remake of The Vanishing. I don't think I've ever seen the original one. But this has, Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland in it. And I love this movie. Like, it's one of those movies that I feel like is a really perfect movie. And it's pretty much about Kiefer Sutherland. They actually show to Jeff Bridges in the movie, is in charge, the kidnapper. You see him in the beginning of the movie planning this, and he's like trying to test things out and figure out how he's going to kidnap somebody and what he wants to do with them. And in the movie, though, it's Kiefer Sutherland on a road trip with Sandra Bullock, who's his girlfriend, and they just proposed, but they kind of got into like a little bit of a fight about something. End up stopping at a gas station because she wants to get something to drink, and she ends up going missing. And it's years later, it's like 3 or 4 years later, Kiefer Sutherland's character, who had everything and really, everything was perfect for him, is kind of lost it and is pretty much obsessed about wondering where she is. He ends up finding a new girlfriend that he's with, and he's trying to get Sandra Bullock's character out of his head, but he's still wondering what's going on. And then eventually he ends up getting contacted by Jeff Bridges' character. And Jeff Bridges' character is like, I'm going to tell you what happened, but you have to do this. And it's a really well-made movie. Can't recommend that one enough. The next one from MPI, from IFC's line, is Beneath. And this is about a group of, this is based on some real stories, but they added some more horror stuff to it. But it's about a group of these miners who are, coal miners, and the one's daughter's with the guy, kind of like seeing the mines and things like that. And there ends up being a collapse in the mine, and they end up getting trapped down there. And they call out and they say, "Oh, we can't come and get you for so many days." And down there, there's hardly any oxygen, so they end up having to kind of hide away into this little safe tank they have, like a safe kind of room, almost like a trailer that has air tanks, and they can survive in there. They got food and everything. But then they start hearing things outside of the tank and the kind of trailer thing, and something is going on. They're like seeing weird type things. People are starting to see warped things in their mind, and it's kind of about them, dying off and things like that by something out in this mine. It's a pretty creepy movie. I thought, and it actually too was really good sets. I wasn't sure if they actually shot in like a real mine for part of this, but they actually built all this stuff. And it has on here, some interviews and featurettes and things like that about making of the movie. It was just a pretty creepy underground kind of movie, a little bit like The Descent and those kind of films. The next one is one of my other favorite ones in this update. It's just such a fun, weird movie. It's from Gorgon Video. MPI released it, but it's through Gorgon Video. I like their kind of stuff. I like that they're starting to put out their movies now on DVD and Blu-ray. But this one is Evils of the Night. And this is by no means like an amazing movie, but to me, that's what I liked about it. I liked that it had some kind of weird things about it. And also it has, Julia Newmar and John Carradine and Tina Louise, who is from Gilligan's Island in this. And it's kind of like, how did they get them in this movie? Because, like, if you see the movie, it's kind of like, well, I don't know I don't know if they didn't know. And they have all the raw footage from this, too. A lot of raw video, seeing them making this. They don't have the sound anymore. The elements were lost. But, it's actually pretty cool to see them because you can see they were kind of like annoyed. And it did not look, I wish the sound existed because I could tell they were not happy. But it's about these kind of, people out in the woods getting getting killed off, and Tina Louise and Julia Newmar and John Carradine play like these aliens, and they're wearing these real cheesy spacesuits, and they're going out and they need blood to live, and they're going out and getting having these kind of weird old guys go out and bring back teenagers for them, and to bring them back to get their blood. And it's just such a weird movie, and it has like this really great song in it too, this really cheesy 80s song when they're on the beach. I can't recommend this enough. It's a total like Joe Bob Briggs kind of up all night kind of movie. I don't know if they ever played that on that. It also has on here the TV cut of the movie. It's had to cut out all the nudity and stuff, and it has some additional scenes. But this is, like I said, this is a really fun, weird movie. The next one is a documentary on Dylan and Daisy Hilton, who were Siamese twins connected like at the hip on the side. I think nowadays they would have easily been able to be separated. I'm pretty sure they would have been able to, but back then, in the 20s and 30s, that they couldn't have done it. It would have been too risky. But they were best known though from the movie Freaks. But this is kind of about them, their whole story about how they were kind of given up by their mother to this terrible woman who was kind of using them for money, and all the terrible things they went through in their life. They were so used and everything about them. And then this guy who took over, their stepsister who married this guy, and he was so controlling, wouldn't let them leave, wouldn't let them out of his sight, wouldn't let them do anything. They had no life. It was kind of about how when they broke off and finally got to do their own things together, and just about how they were on vaudeville, and then about all their kind of alcohol problems and all kinds of problems they had. And just such a well-made movie. Also talking about the sideshow and the freak show aspect of it too, and how all those people in the freak show were so unhappy. And it was a really well-made film. Especially if you love the movie Freaks, I would definitely check that out. The next one from Lionsgate is the unauthorized Saved by the Bell story. I always wonder too, like what the original cast think of this. I don't know if any of them watched this, but this is Dustin Diamond's take on it. It's based off his book, but I know there's a lot of contradictions, and they say like, oh well, he made a lot of this stuff up. I really like this. I thought this was I really liked it. It was made for Lifetime, but probably one of my favorite Lifetime things that I've seen. And it's pretty much about how the story came together, and how it started, and kind of like all the on-set kind of problems that they were having, and how they weren't getting along with it. Like I said, this is so said through Dustin Diamond's perspective of it. I like this stuff. Like if you're interested in Saved by the Bell, I think you guys would like this. I thought it was well made. I liked it. I really got into this and kind of like cried a little bit in it. I don't know. I maybe because I hadn't seen tons and tons of episodes of Saved by the Bell. Maybe that was why I liked it a little bit more. But I liked it. The next one from Lionsgate as well is Jason Patric, Bruce Willis, John Cusack. Man, I don't know why I screwed that up. Film The Prince, and it's pretty much about Jason Patric's character, who, kind of had some things in the past he was up to, contracting and kind of like he was up to no good in the past. He kind of got out of that lifestyle. But one day he's talking to his daughter. She's planning to come and see him, talking to him on Skype. Something seems very strange about what's going on, and he ends up, she doesn't end up showing up, but he ends up kind of following after and trying to find her, and figuring out what had happened to her and where she went. So it's kind of about him trying to figure out where she is and put the pieces together and try and find her. I thought this was pretty good, though. I not an absolutely perfect movie, but it was one of those movies that was just kind of like a fun movie watching him try and find it. And John Cusack was pretty good in this as well. Bruce Willis was a little bit underused in it. He has kind of like an odd kind of beard in this one as well. The next one from Lionsgate as well is America, Imagine a World Without Her. Didn't know a whole lot about this one. It's kind of like a movie that examines all the past things and kind of like that America's mostly known for. Like all the kind of different events in the past, and it's kind of like examining them and then showing, like what would happen in a world like if these things didn't happen or they didn't happen the same way. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of got like weird messages about stuff though, because you can't tell like what they're kind of going for, some of the stuff they're saying. It's kind of like I don't like to think too much about all that kind of stuff in the past. It's like, because there was like bad things that happened in the past. But like they're trying to like show like if they didn't happen this way or they happened this way. It's an interesting documentary though, but it wasn't totally something I was that interested in. The next one is Little House on the Prairie, and this is like the Christmas special edition, and it's a Mary Ingalls Christmas. I like this show. I mean, this has on here like the very first episode when they had their Christmas, and it has like a clip show going back, looking back at like other moments. With the family, dealing with like Christmas aspects and snowstorms and things like that. But it's about a family that ends up moving out, living off the land in kind of like this big house in the middle of hardly anything around, and their whole life together. And it's just a fun family show, really well produced too. Back then they were shooting everything on film, really well made show. I like the show though. The next one from Synapse, and they're finally available now in the standalone editions. They were available in those limited edition tins, but now they're out on, these editions doesn't have the features, but it has the movies. But really good transfers on both of these, and it's Demons and Demons 2. Great cover on both of these. Demons was in the theater, the movie theater, about, this movie where, the demons were coming out, basically through this like possessed weird movie and start killing the people. Really great, movie, especially like movies like set in movie theaters and crazy demon effects and stuff like that. Definitely have to watch this. And Demons 2 was set in an apartment building, and I always felt like too, 28 weeks later took a little bit of aspects from the scene with them in the garage of this movie. I felt like they kind of took aspects of that. This is one of Asia Argento's 2 earliest movies as well. Dario Argento produced both of these movies, but they got great music in them. It's really, really cool, crazy demon possession movies. I really love these ones. Like I said, I'm glad they're finally out in, lower price editions. The next one from Image is, and this is actually a really crazy movie, and it's called The Three Dogateers, and it's about like these dogs that, left at home, and they're kind of like talking to each other, and it's some of the weirdest animation of the mouths you've ever seen. And it kind of adds to it, because you could tell they're just sort of screwing around with it. Richard Riley's in this movie, and it's like the dogs end up going on this, like, these criminals break into the house and like steal things, so they kind of go after them. It's kind of like their adventure, and then they see these ads for like this mall, the Santa Claus of the Mall, played by Richard Riley, and they want to see him. But it's pretty much about them trying to go after the people that stole the stuff from their house, while their owner, Dean Cain's away. I don't know. Like I said, it's just such a weird movie. Bill Oberst Jr., I always mess his name up, is in this as like the dog catcher that tries to go after them. It's just a really fun, kind of real 90s movie. But I don't think they had to do the animation on the mouth, because it made it so strange. I would have just done it Homeward Bound-ish. But maybe the strange mouth animation kind of added to it. But it was definitely an interesting, weird movie. And like it also has this really crazy song at the end when they're all singing. The next one is another John Cusack film with Thomas Jane called Drive Hard. Thomas Jane used to be this like really famous race car driver, and kind of now is like, he's living in Australia and kind of just trying to get on with his life and pay the bills, and he's working as like a driving instructor, and John Cusack comes in there for the test and pretty much forces him to drive him around, and he ends up going he's doing a terrible job driving the guy, John Cusack, and then he drives at this bank and ends up robbing the bank. And, it's pretty much about him forcing him at gunpoint, Thomas Jane, to drive, and why other people are after him because of who he took the money from. I like this, though. I thought this was a pretty good one. One of those kind of ones, forcing somebody to do it when a lot of the movies set in the car. But I thought it was actually a pretty good one. I thought Thomas Jane was in it, was pretty good in this as well. The next one from Arc Entertainment is... the new Tiffany Thiessen film, it was from the original Saved by the Bell, and it's North Pole. It's like a Christmas kind of family film about like in Christmas land, like because people they're talking about how like they're not really celebrating Christmas as much anymore, not really talking about it as much in the world, and people are more kind of upset all the time, and not as many positive people. So like the land is kind of like falling apart, and they need like they kind of rely on the energy of positivity to keep this the North Pole Christmas land going. So this one elf ends up coming to out of the North Pole, like the Earth, or however you would put it, and trying to talk to this one kid who was like the voice of Sherman and Mr. Peabody, and it's pretty much about him trying to bring positivity with this kid and also try and keep this tree light ceremony going. I kind of like this one, though. I mainly watched it for Tiffany Thiessen because she doesn't do too many movies these days. But and the one girl in it was the elf, was from like Are You Afraid of the Dark and things like that. I actually thought this was pretty good, though. The next one from Full Moon is Dr. Mordred, and it's a Jeffrey Combs movie. I feel like this is one that's not talked about as much. And it's about him as like this crazy doctor kind of guy who like has all these like books and things like that about things in the past and these ancient religions and things like that. And it's kind of about him going on this, trying to like stop this bad guy that came, and this one student who's with him. It's such a weird, strange movie, though. You can kind of tell how it's not one of those ones that gets talked about as much. Like I had never heard of this one before. But Jeffrey Combs was pretty cool in this, but it's just a weird movie about him looking for, like trying to get this bad guy and things like that. But it has a commentary on here, and then a bunch of uncut behind-the-scenes footage of this movie. The next one from Anchor Bay is The One I Love with Mark Duplass and Elizabeth Moss, and it's a really different take on like this relationship kind of thing, and takes like a really interesting turn. It's about them going to this kind of retreat to try and get away, like a marriage kind of place, and they get there and weird things start happening. They start talking to each other going, oh, last night was great and we had this talk about this, or when this happened, or we had sex, and they're saying all these different things, and they're like, what are you talking about? That didn't happen. They're kind of yelling at each other, and it turns out that there's other versions of themselves there, but they only are seeing them when they're separated. So like they're in this one room, they go in there, and then they see the other version of his wife or the other version of her husband, and they kind of are getting along better with their other selves, and it's just this weird movie about them trying to figure out what's going on and why there's other versions of themselves there, and kind of like what's the meaning behind this whole thing. I kind of like this. Like I said, though, it's a very different, weird take on the whole thing. It's directed by Malcolm McDowell's son, Charlie McDowell. The next one is The Oatmeal Man. I heard about this one for a long time. It's like about a guy, these people going on a road trip, and they're ending up, it's kind of stranded in this kind of like abandoned kind of town place. And there's this guy, like, it's kind of like covered in oatmeal kind of guy, like killing people off in this. John Craes, I believe that's how you say his name. I've talked to him at some conventions and things like that. And he's a cool guy. He's in this movie. Mindy Robinson's in this movie. But it's just pretty much about them getting, like, killed off one by this character. And they made the movie for only like $500, by pulling favors and things like that. The next one from R Squared video is Where's the Fair? This is kind of talking about the World's Fair and about like, where it went and what happened to it. And it's actually still around, but in America they don't have it. They don't really want anything to do with it. And it kind of talks about the fair in the past and the expo now and how they're still doing it and how America doesn't want to put money into it. It's a really actually pretty interesting documentary. And the last one from Inception Media is Betrayal with Eric Roberts, and it's a kind of like a ex-mobster guy who in the past ends up his son gets in trouble for something and believed to have killed this guy, so the guy ends up having to kind of get back into his past and don't go and do these things that he didn't think he'd ever have to do again. And there's some interesting scenes in this, like them all sitting around the table discussing things. I kind of like this though. It's just you know me. I watch like all these Eric Roberts movies. Like I feel like there's an Eric Roberts movie in almost like every update because he's in so many movies. But it's like him trying to get revenge and them after each other and trying to all that kind of stuff. But anyway though, guys, thanks again for watching, subscribing to the new update, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.